It's time to sew the bag corners, but before we start stitching on our bag, we're going to check the threading of our machine. So on your little spider, do about 1 inch or so of stitching, needle up, press your foot up, put off to the left, and make sure that you that it looks the same on both the top and the bottom. So here we go. Now, I drew on those 3 little marks to help me line up, and they're just a guide. They're not an absolute, because actually if you see what's going on, it's not going to quite be on top of there. If I stitch it there, it's really more like 5/8 of an inch. So I am going to, I should be able to almost use it as my outside edge, but I'm going to line up here. I don't want to make it too wide there, so I'm going to line up here. My marks aren't quite accurate, so I'm going to use my foot instead. Sometimes things work, sometimes things don't. So I'm going to put my needle down, take my pin out. Again, I use my hand to kind of hold things in place so things don't get away from me. Hold on to your threads to start, and we're going to do a couple stitches forward. And you really do need to stitch all the way back to the edge of the fabric, and maybe even 1 stitch off, because if you don't, you're going to have a little hole in the corner. So I'm going to back stitch all the way to the edge. Oh, I'm going to do 1 more. And now I'm going to stitch forward. Don't forget to stop and take your pins out as you go. Now when we come up on this seam, we want to make sure that it stays going that way, because the one that's underneath is going this way, and we don't want them both going the same direction. They'll make a big lump in the bottom of your bag. When you stitch the other one, the bottom seam will be going towards the back of the sewing machine, and the top one will be going this way. So you have to make sure that you don't let that get twisted as you go, because if you do, you have to take it out and do it over again. That's one of the things that I am checking when I'm grading. And then I'm just going to keep stitching on over here. And I want to make sure as I stitch here, I don't turn the corner. I want to go straight off the edge. And I want to back stitch 3 or 4 stitches. Stop, needle up, press your foot up, and pull off to the left. Don't forget, clip those corners or clip the threads, because we're going to stitch the zigzagging next, and we don't want those threads to get caught in what we're doing. All right? So I'm going to go ahead. Normally you would just go ahead and stitch the other straight one, and that's what I want you to do. But for time's sake, I'm just going to switch over to stitch number 5, and we're going to do the zigzagging. And so what I'm going to do is line up the outside edge of the presser foot with my previous line of stitching. Remember, you still don't want this little thing to flap around, so keep it where it is. This time, since there's no other seam that's going to cross this zigzagging, I want you to do a few stitches forward and then do 1 or 2 backwards just to lock those threads. And then keep this line of stitching right along where you are, right along your presser foot, and then just stitch across there, keeping those seams flat. Don't let them flip up. When you get to the end, make sure you go back a couple of stitches just to lock those threads. Needle up, press your foot up, pull off to the left, and you see I have a little extra thread there. That's going to lock my stitch. Clip those threads nice and close. I do check that as I am grading your bags. I check to see that you have all those little threads cut. It's one of the things that you're being evaluated on, that your bag is as neat on the inside as it is on the outside. And so this part of the stitching is done. I'm going to zoom back a little bit and see if I can move the machine out of the way, so you can see what this corner looks like once we turn it. You can go ahead and press this flat before you turn it, or you can just turn it. But the main thing is you want to make sure that as you turn your bag, that those corners get poked out completely. All right, so you have that nice little box on the bottom there. And your seam allowances right here should match up. They should be right on top of one another. Okay, so go ahead and do the straight stitching on both first, then do the zigzagging, and then you should be able to turn your bag right side out.